This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we look into the mysterious disappearance of one of the world's greatest mystery writers, Dame Agatha Christie.
The Dame herself.
The Dame herself.
Queen of Mystery becomes a mystery.
Now that is a very offensive...
Where'd she go?
I don't know.
Oh.
I guess that's what we'll have to find out.
I was not aware of this.
I get these case files just like you do. They just get slapped on my desk and they say solve it. And every single time, I don't.
You got there like almost once, right? There was an unsolved with a question mark at the end of it.
Well, you know, almost isn't going to cut it. We need a W in the column.
You want to slap the cuffs on somebody. That's a win.
Yeah, I want to point at the skeleton and go,
You
did it.
We gotcha! And then stomp on the skull.
Yeah, I don't know about that part,
Oh,
but
okay.
I think the finger point is, that's what I want.
Well, this one sounds like a real whodunit.
From the whodunit master herself. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Agatha Mary Clarissa Miller was born on September 15, 1890, in Devon, England. The youngest daughter of upper-middle-class Frederick and Clara Miller, Christie was homeschooled in a somewhat unusual fashion. Clara reportedly didn't want her daughter to learn how to read until she turned 8. By the age of 5, feeling understimulated, Agatha taught herself to read, beginning a lifelong obsession with books.
You won't teach me to read? Fuck you! I'll read!
Maybe that was the strategy, because kids don't want to read. I'm gonna tell my kids, hey, no reading, no vegetables.
And you like drive them out to the woods and leave them there.
Okay, I don't know about that part.
Well, then they have to sort of, use their wits to get home.
Yeah, but that's not really the reverse psychology. That's just torture at that point.
That's a good way to raise kids.
I think you're not gonna spend any time with my kids.
Okay, that's fair.
In 1912, Agatha met a dashing young aviator named Archibald Archie Christie. The outbreak of World War I, which both pitched in for, kept the budding lovers apart for years. Despite warnings from her mother that Archie seemed to be a cad who would never be faithful, on Christmas Eve 1914, Agatha married Archie while he was on leave. In 1919, Agatha gave birth to her only child, a daughter, Rosalind. Agatha had written short stories throughout her teens, but when her older sister bet her she couldn't write a good mystery, she penned her debut novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. After several major rejections, publisher John Lane not only bought the book, but also contracted Agatha to write 5 more books. This proved to be a brilliant decision, as Styles introduced the world to one of literature's most popular characters, the eccentric detective Hercule Poirot, who would feature in over 24 novels and even more short stories.
I know this is a show about crime and mystery, but let's take a nice little lesson from this. She got rejected over and over again, and eventually got that deal and became a successful writer. So if you're out there and you're working on something, people keep telling you, not good enough. Maybe it is good enough. Keep at it.
Keep knocking on that door until they eventually open.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
It's a sweet message from the boys for you in the middle of...
And you don't get many of them, so
No.
cherish this.
Yeah. Anyway.
Back to the story.
Yeah.
Agatha proved to be a prolific writer, and her rise to stardom was meteoric. Unfortunately, within only a few years of achieving widespread fame, she suffered a period of great emotional hardship. Her mother, with whom she'd been extremely close, passed away in 1926. Her grief brought on a massive case of writer's block, and she was unable to finish the book she was working on, The Mystery of the Blue Train. Making matters worse was the fact that Archie, just as Agatha's mom had predicted, had begun an affair with a woman 10 years her junior, Nancy Neal.
Archie! I was rooting for him.
Yeah.
I was. A hunky aviator? Sign me up. Agatha's going through some stuff. Her mother just died,
Yeah.
and you're gonna go down the block to get a little strange? You sicko. You nasty man.
Next time you fly in the sky, don't come back.
Or do come back, but, straight into the ground, Buster.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's right.
Christ.
Yeah, you heard me, Archie. You
I think he's dead.
Good.
Holy shit!
On December 3rd, 1926, at around 9 p.m., Agatha put 5-year-old Rosalind to bed and kissed her goodnight. The 36-year-old author grabbed an attaché case, left her house wordlessly, and drove off into the night. The next morning, Agatha's car was discovered hanging precariously over the edge of a chalk quarry. It appeared the car had been run off the road, careening towards a cliff and stopping just before the edge. Inside was the attaché case, a fur coat, and her driver's license. The driver was nowhere to be found. In short order, the author's disappearance became headline news around the globe. The famed mystery writer had herself become the central character in a real-life thriller. 3 days later, however, the search for the acclaimed novelist was suddenly called off after Christie's brother-in-law reported receiving a letter from her the day after her disappearance, saying she was going to a spa in Yorkshire, quote, for rest and treatment, end quote. The police, however, suspected the letter was fake and reopened the case almost immediately. A week after Agatha's disappearance, police were flummoxed. Despite hundreds of reported sightings of the famous author all across the UK, no tips led anywhere. Authorities began resorting to increasingly desperate strategies. They brought one of Agatha's dogs to the scene of the abandoned car in the hopes it could track her scent. Instead, the dog, quote, whined pitifully.
What a shitty dog.
Hey, man. Not every dog's gonna be a bloodhound, okay?
No, almost everyone isn't.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, this dog signed up for belly rubs and bones.
Let's put the dog out there, see what it does. Oh, nothing.
If that's your first line of defense as a police force, is to be like, maybe the dog knows who did it. Maybe.
Have you interviewed the dog?
Yeah.
The dog said something about a woof woof.
At one point, for unclear reasons, police speculated Agatha was possibly in London, quote, disguised and probably in male attire, end quote. Detectives scoured her manuscripts for clues she may have left behind and even brought in a group of mediums and spiritualists to hold a seance at the scene of her disappearance. Unsurprisingly, none of these efforts went anywhere.
They gotta get some actual people working on this case.
It's weird that they're like, hey, one of the most important, influential figures in the UK went missing. Let's break out the Scooby-Doo playbook. Let's have the dog look
See
for
what
them.
the dog says.
Yeah.
No dice there. How about some magicians?
Yeah.
We got any jugglers in the wings?
It seems like the only thing they didn't do was police work.
Yeah.
If you went missing, I would go through the proper channels.
Thank you.
To cover my tracks.
What?
It's reported that between 10,000 and 20,000 people helped search for the author, with over 1,000 police constables involved. It's even thought this may have been the first time airplanes were deployed in the search of a missing person. On December 11th, the New York Times reported that there had finally been a substantial break in the case. Before she left, Christie had apparently left 3 letters behind. One was the already mentioned letter to her brother-in-law. The second was to her private secretary, which only contained details about her schedule. The third and most intriguing letter was left for her husband. Allegedly, Archie refused to hand the letter over to authorities and instead allegedly burned it, maintaining it contained no information about her whereabouts.
Archie, up to no good again.
Now, maybe I'm just a paranoid guy, but it seems a little suspicious if your missing wife wrote you a letter and before you could hand it over to the police, you just said, hey, trust me, that letter was not important. Also, I burned it.
Yeah.
Let's do a vibe check
Let's
here.
do a vibe check. It's a classic BuzzFeed Unsolved vibe check.
Yeah. Where are you at with Archie? What are
I
your
think
vibes
he's a
on
nasty
that?
man.
I think he's a nasty man.
I think he's
as
a
well.
nasty man.
Guilty, I'm not sure,
Can't say that yet.
but I am interested.
He's not on my good side, I'll tell you that.
On December 15th, Bob Tappan, the banjo player in the resident band at the Swan Hydro Hotel in Harrogate, Yorkshire, reportedly thought something looked a bit familiar about the woman dancing the Charleston as he played Yes, We Have No Bananas.
Yes, we have no bananas.
Do you know that song?
Yeah, I know that song.
That's cool. Do any of you know that song?
It's a good song.
You, I've said this before, are a strange man.
Guilty as charged.
It turns out Bob Tappan was correct. The woman dancing in front of him in Yorkshire was indeed the real Agatha Christie. It had been 12 days since Agatha Christie was last seen. But here she was, getting down to a novelty song on a Wednesday night. Agatha's letter to her brother-in-law was correct after all. She was spending time at a spa in Yorkshire.
They didn't think to check the spa?
No.
These dipshits.
The first thing that happened in this case was they got a letter from her brother that said, hey, I'm in Yorkshire. And they were like, bullshit. Now
Call
let's
the magician.
get her dog on the horn.
Get those planes up in the air.
How many people can we get on this case?
20,000? Start walking around everywhere else.
And do whatever you do, none of them are to go to Yorkshire, ever.
Don't you say fuck.
Now, where does this story go, you might ask?
Yeah, now I'm curious.
Somehow, Agatha had gotten from her car to King's Cross Station, where she'd boarded a train to Harrogate. She had virtually no luggage, but was having a pleasant and uneventful stay, joining in on balls and dances and receiving spa treatments. Despite the fact that she was the subject of a nationwide search, no one seemed to bother her, perhaps because she had checked in under an assumed name, Mrs. Teresa Neal.
She's good at coming up with fake names.
Shall I remind you what the name of the mistress was?
Teresa Neal?
It was Nancy Neal.
Nancy Neal. Okay, cool.
That may come in later, just saying.
I mean, also just smart to, use real names as your fake names, I guess, right?
That's true.
Because if anytime you try to come up with a fake name, it sounds like something stupid.
No, it's crazy to check in under a fake name.
After Tappan notified police of the lauded author's whereabouts, Archie traveled to the hotel to pick up his wife. Reportedly, Agatha greeted her husband with a, quote, stony stare, apparently at a total loss for who the man was. Archie told reporters, quote, she does not know who she is. She has suffered from the most complete loss of memory, end quote.
At what point does she lose her memory? Because she still made it to where she needed to go, so if she lost her memory before then, is she on autopilot? Does the mind retain its sort of intentions and short-term goals? That's gotta be freaky to be like on the road and like, well, I know where I'm going, but I don't know who I am.
Yeah, but how many times have you been driving, daydreaming, listening to some tunes on the radio, and then you're like, whoa, I'm at the destination I was supposed to go to.
That makes sense. I black out every time I get behind the wheel. Yeah.
When I got to set today, I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Every time Ryan gets here, he screams, where am I? Who am I?
And then I scream, I figured out teleportation.
And we say, no.
And they had to talk me down every time.
We have this conversation so often.
I wouldn't recall.
When asked by reporters pointedly and explicitly why his wife chose the name Neal, Archie deflected, saying she had no idea who she was, and pointed to the fact that Agatha had apparently placed ads in the newspaper under that name in the hopes a relative would come forward and help her learn about herself. After the incident, Agatha and Archie lived apart, with the author taking up residence with her daughter in a London flat as she underwent a course of psychiatric treatment. According to Agatha, this therapy gradually restored her memory. In 1928, she and Archie officially divorced. Finally free from her stressful relationship, Agatha was able to complete The Mystery of the Blue Train. That year, she also fulfilled a lifelong dream to travel on the Orient Express, which would eventually inspire one of her most famous novels, Murder on the Orient Express. In 1930, Agatha married archaeologist Max Mallowan. During her second, happier marriage, Agatha continued to write prolifically, sometimes completing 2 or 3 books a year. She did, however, avoid writing about at least a couple subjects. In her autobiography, Agatha wrote neither about her disappearance nor the disillusion of her first marriage, saying only, quote, there is no need to dwell on it, end quote.
Kick ass if all of the rest of her novels were just about pilots being murdered.
That would be actually pretty amazing. Yeah. Also, just incredibly British. No need to dwell on it.
That's true. No.
with Agatha Christie back safe and sound, though clearly reluctant to speak about what occurred. It's time we dive into theories surrounding just what happened that December 1926. Our first theory is the whole ordeal was a publicity stunt. This was one of the earliest theories when first Agatha went missing. Her novel, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, had been released earlier that year, and the theory goes that Agatha knew that if she went missing, her enormous popularity would mean she'd be headline news, thus driving sales. One big hole in this theory is the fact that the book had already been incredibly popular without the need for a stunt. When asked if she could fake her own death, Agatha's secretary replied, quote, "It is ridiculous. Mrs. Christie is quite too much a lady for that." End quote.
Hey, I buy it.
Yeah. Wait, what?
I buy it.
That it was a publicity stunt?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem that far off. One, all you have to do to the secretary is say, yeah, just tell them I'm far too much a lady for that. Okay, gotcha. Here's 10 quid. And if the novel was a success, who's to say? There's a lot of successful novels out there. Doesn't mean all the authors go on to become, historic figures in literature. So maybe she really wanted to cement herself in the public eye, and that'd be a good way to do it. I think it's a great idea.
I feel like the book was already a hit.
I mean, Tom Hiddleston dated Taylor Swift. Remember that?
Tom Hiddleston.
You remember that?
How
They
dare
wore
you.
shirts that said, I heart TS, I heart TH.
How dare you bring up TT?
TT, was that their couple name?
It was for me. Tom and Taylor.
You're a ride or die for TT, huh?
I love TT. Counterpoint, she also hated the limelight. She did not like that. She also had stage fright. Seems a bit much for
Yeah,
someone of that makeup.
Counterpoint, mon frere. She's going to a spa, so she clearly likes a little luxury. I'm thinking maybe she got used to that sweet quiche, you know what I'm saying?
Counterpoint.
What?
She checked in under a false name. Didn't even use Agatha.
Yes, but I'm saying that's part of the ruse to get more famous, to get more money. This is all part of it.
Are you counterpointing
Yes,
me?
I am.
You son of a bitch.
I know, I'm doing it. I mean, the end goal here, of course, yeah, she checked in a fake name because that's just adding to the narrative here.
Counterpoint.
You're keeping track of this?
In a spa, when you get a massage, they put your face in that little toilet bowl thing. They can't even see your face. They wouldn't even know it's her.
You're missing the point.
You're missing the point.
Our second theory is that Agatha intentionally set the whole disappearance up to cast a public spotlight on, and thus humiliate, her husband for his adulterous ways. The weekend of her disappearance, Agatha had known that Archie was planning to stay over at his paramour, Nancy Neal's place, which, perhaps not coincidentally, was a mere 6 miles away from where Agatha's car was found. Needless to say, Archie's romantic weekend was torn to shreds due to his wife's disappearance. Biographer Jared Cade has posited that Agatha not only planned her disappearance, but also had help doing so from her sister-in-law and childhood friend, Nan Watts. Cade suggests that after abandoning her car, Agatha took a local train to London, where she stayed with Nan that night. Nan then would have given her money for her stay in Harrogate. Cade came to this conclusion after persuading Nan's daughter Barbara to go through family papers. However, the disappearance does seem to be a very elaborate and public way to handle a cheating spouse, especially for a person as private as Agatha.
You know, someone who has been cheated on or made to look a fool, that inspires probably some desire for vengeance, whether it be violent or humiliation.
You working through some stuff right now?
No, I've actually never, I'm trying to put myself in her mind. That's never happened to me.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Especially a flyboy like that, a cocky flyboy.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Even after your mother, your own mother, said, I'm telling you, this guy's no good, he's dirt.
That's true.
And then you say to your mother, fuck off, Mom, I love him, okay?
Yeah.
And he's not gonna make me look like a fool.
I fought my mother for you.
And then your mother dies, so that's another thing.
And now she's dead.
And then he cheats on you?
And then you cheated on me.
After what you said to your mother and sticking up for him and having faith in him and believing in him?
She's rolling over in her grave because of you.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna change my name and wear a wig and get on a train. Makes sense.
Yeah, I guess.
Our final theory is the one put forth by Agatha herself, which is that she suffered from memory loss due to her car crash. In February 1928, Agatha was interviewed by the Daily Mail about her disappearance, the one and only time she ever spoke about the incident. The author felt it necessary to explain the events to the best of her ability, as she had continued to be torched by the media with speculation that the whole ordeal had been made up. According to Christie, she had been suffering from insomnia before her disappearance, sleeping on average only 2 hours a night. Christie was known to suffer from bouts of despondency and depression, and on the day of her disappearance, she was even having suicidal thoughts. Quote, "I just wanted my life to end. As I passed by Newlands Corner that afternoon, I saw a quarry, and there came into my mind a thought of driving into it. However, as my daughter was with me in the car, I dismissed the idea at once." End quote. Agatha continued with her recollection of what happened after she left the house that evening. Quote, "All that night I drove aimlessly about. When I reached a point on the road which I thought was near the quarry I had seen in the afternoon, I turned the car off the road down the hill towards it. I left the wheel and let the car run. The car struck something with a jerk and pulled up suddenly. I was flung against the steering wheel and my head hit something." End quote.
My heart breaks for this woman.
Yeah, she went through a lot. She lost her mom.
Yeah.
Writer's block. Her husband's being an asshole. It could get to the best of anybody.
Agatha continued, quote, "Up to this moment, I was Mrs. Christie. After the accident in the car, however, I lost my memory. I remember arriving at a big railway station and asking what it was, and being surprised it was Waterloo. It is strange that the railway authorities there did not recall me, as I was covered with mud and I had smeared blood on my face from a cut on my head." End quote.
Yeah, that probably sticks out, huh?
One, the fact that she's covered in mud and has blood on her head, but also like, hey, that kind of looks like Agatha Christie.
Do people know what authors look like?
At this time, she was one of the most famous people.
I recognize Stephen King.
Well, I mean, it'd be hard to miss him.
Yeah. Other than that, James Patterson, I don't know what he looks like. James Patterson could come up to me on the street and kiss me on the mouth. And I would say, "Nice to meet you. You know, who are you?"
That's what you would say?
Yes.
It is a bit odd that there was, 20,000 people involved in a nationwide search, and these two bozos at the railway station didn't go, "Hey, you remember that lady who was covered in mud and blood and kind of looked like Agatha Christie on the day that the accident happened?"
You know what, though? And apologies to any English viewers if I'm getting this wrong, but my read on the English people is that they're a bit nonchalant and perhaps don't want to get involved with something like that. So I could see two workers at this railway station just seeing her and then sort of turning to each other and be like, "Looks a bit worse for wear."
I hope you're ready for the wrath of the UK that's going to come at you on Twitter. You're going to hear things like, "I don't know if I agree with that." That Shane's a bit of a disagreeable fellow, no?
Quote, "I then remember arriving at the hotel in Harrogate. I was still muddy and showing signs of my accident when I arrived there. I had now become, in my mind, Mrs. Tessa Neal of South Africa." End quote. During the interview, Agatha expressed a near nostalgia for her lost time. Quote, "As Mrs. Neal, I was very happy and contented. I had become, as it were, a new woman, and all the worries and anxieties of Mrs. Christie had left me. When I was brought back to my life as Mrs. Christie again, many of my worries and anxieties returned, and although I am not quite well and cheerful, and have lost my morbid tendencies completely, I have not quite that utter happiness of Mrs. Neal." End quote.
God, I'd love to go into a fugue state.
That's a very strange wish.
You wouldn't want to?
You know what? If I could be guaranteed that there wouldn't be lasting damage and to know that I would come back from it, yeah, it'd be kind of fun.
Critics of Agatha's account wonder how she could have seen newspapers plastered with her own face throughout her stay and remain oblivious. The author addressed this during the interview. Quote, "I read every day about Mrs. Christie's disappearance and came to the conclusion that she was dead. I regarded her as having acted stupidly. I was greatly struck by my resemblance to her and pointed it out to other people in the hotel. It never occurred to me I might be her, as I was quite satisfied in my mind as to who I was. Agatha further detailed how, by spending time with doctors and relatives, she was able to gradually remember who she was. After the interview, it appears few were convinced she was telling the truth. The Irish Times went so far as to call her version, quote, as complete a work of fiction as anything she had written, end quote. One inconsistency critics continued to point to was that Agatha's story didn't add up. Literally, the money didn't add up. Many were suspicious about how Agatha, as Mrs. Neal, could have afforded the hotel stay, including the spa services, new clothes, and indulgent drinks and meals. In the interview, however, Agatha noted she'd originally left the house with 60 pounds. Today, 60 pounds would be the equivalent of about 3,800 pounds.
I would assume that would cover a week at this hotel.
Well, so, what are they, looking at her bank account? Whatever, they don't know.
Yeah, she could have had some funny money.
We've all got a little walking around money.
Yeah, funny money.
Funny money.
I actually believe her.
You believe her?
I do think that this is what happened. I know it sounds crazy, but it sounds too crazy for it not to be true.
You know what? I'm compelled to different degrees on these different theories, but because she was around after this and has given her own account of it, I am going to believe her on this one.
Yeah.
Because it's an opportunity we're rarely afforded on Unsolved. If this is her story, then I think we owe it to her to buy it. No one was really hurt,
No, that's true.
I
mean, some pride was hurt on the police force and her husband.
I think they can handle that.
I think they can handle that.
And they're all dead anyway, so.
Yeah, I guess so.
Probably.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also, like I said, it's stranger than fiction, in my opinion.
So yeah, you know what? Yeah.
Okay.
Agatha's last public appearance was for the 1974 film premiere of Murder on the Orient Express, starring Albert Finney as Hercule Poirot. The author reportedly thought the film was a fair adaptation, though did note the famed detective's mustache was not nearly luxurious enough. Agatha Christie passed away peacefully on January 12, 1976, at age 85. The novelist, poet, and playwright wrote 75 novels, including 66 detective novels and 14 short story collections. Her works have sold over 100 million copies and have been translated into some 100 languages. And while she was responsible for some of the most popular mystery stories ever told, perhaps Agatha Christie's greatest mystery, what really happened after she drove into the night one December Friday in 1926, remains unsolved.
Good for her. Yeah. I mean, she seemed to try and clear it up, but good for her for involving a little mystery in her own life, whether she liked it or not.
When you look at it, she had the thing that we all aspire to, which is a week guilt-free at a spa.
I like just the thematic consistency of her life mirroring some of these detective novels. It would be like if you got murdered.
Or murdered somebody.
Or murdered, yeah.
Somebody.
Anybody at all.
Yeah, it would be like that.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
I think so.